I want you to close your eyes and picture the ultimate, highly romanticized, and universally celebrated symbol of the traditional middle-class dream. A hardworking citizen spends years saving their money to finally buy a beautiful, modest single-family home with a physical front yard in a quiet, peaceful suburban neighborhood. It is the absolute ultimate milestone of financial independence. It represents a physical, undeniable piece of the earth that legally belongs to you and your family. For generations, the middle class was told that owning a physical home was the absolute safest, most reliable way to build multi-generational wealth and escape the brutal cycle of poverty. But I want you to open your eyes and look very closely at exactly what is happening in your quiet suburban neighborhood right now today. You will notice a terrifying, completely invisible invasion actively taking place right under your nose. Houses are going up for sale, and before a normal, hardworking middle-class family can even schedule a time to look at the physical property, the house is instantly sold. It is completely snatched off the market by an anonymous, shadowy corporate buyer who completely bypassed the bank, bypassed the mortgage process, and aggressively paid 20 or 30% above the asking price in pure, physical, untraceable cash. The traditional middle-class dream is absolutely dead. It is actively being assassinated by the most powerful, highly organized, and mathematically ruthless financial institutions on the face of the planet. Today, I am going to expose a financial reality so incredibly dark, so highly guarded, and so mathematically terrifying that you will absolutely never, ever look at the real estate market the exact same way for the rest of your natural life. The global elite and the massive trillion-dollar institutional investment funds have completely realized that physical land and single-family homes are the absolute ultimate finite resource. In a rapidly inflating world, they are completely abandoning the traditional stock market casinos, and they are actively, aggressively buying the physical ground beneath your feet. In this massive video, we are going to violently unplug you from the toxic, highly manipulated illusion of the modern housing market. We are going to expose the brutal, terrifying mathematics of exactly how massive private equity firms are intentionally destroying the middle-class dream of homeownership, explain the dark psychological warfare of the permanent subscription economy, and show you exactly how the global elite are aggressively constructing a modern system of Neo-Feudalism where you will legally own absolutely nothing and be forced to rent your entire existence. And if you stick with me until the absolute end of this massive video, I will give you the exact step-by-step psychological escape plan to completely assassinate your passive consumer mindset, aggressively secure your own physical territory, and transition from a permanent, heavily bleeding modern peasant into an untouchable, mathematically lethal master of real estate equity. To truly understand the absolute world-shattering magnitude of this massive corporate land grab, we must completely deconstruct the historical concept of human freedom and property ownership. For thousands of years of dark human history, the absolute vast majority of the population were completely impoverished peasants working the physical land for a tiny elite class of incredibly powerful lords and kings. This brutal, completely rigged economic system was called feudalism. The peasants did all of the exhausting, back-breaking physical labor to grow the crops and maintain the property, but they absolutely never owned a single grain of dirt. The lord completely owned the land, and the peasant was forced to pay a massive, suffocating percentage of their physical labor simply for the right to exist on that territory. The absolute greatest, most revolutionary shift in all of human history was the creation of the middle class and the legal right to private property. When a normal working-class human being could finally buy a piece of land, build equity, and pass that physical wealth down to their children, the entire global matrix of poverty was completely shattered. Private property is the absolute fundamental cornerstone of human freedom. Without physical property, you are completely at the mercy of the system. The massive, highly intelligent financial institutions like BlackRock, Vanguard, State Street, and massive private equity firms deeply and profoundly understand this exact historical reality. And they have made a highly calculated, mathematically ruthless decision to completely reverse the course of human history and aggressively return the global population to a permanent state of feudalism. But this time, it is not being done with massive armies, iron swords, or physical violence. It is being executed with highly complex financial algorithms, massive rivers of printed fiat currency, and incredibly aggressive corporate cash offers. The modern feudal lord does not wear a metal crown. They wear a highly tailored designer suit. They sit in a massive glass skyscraper on Wall Street, and they manage trillions of dollars in totally invisible digital wealth. Let us look at the brutal, undeniable mathematical reality of exactly how these massive institutions are actively destroying your future. When a normal, completely average middle-class worker wants to buy a house, they have to navigate a completely exhausting, deeply humiliating financial maze. They have to save for years just to accumulate a tiny 20% down payment. They have to go to a highly regulated retail bank, beg for a 30-year mortgage, and completely submit to a brutal, suffocating credit check. The middle-class worker is highly restricted by incredibly high interest rates and their own limited monthly salary. But the massive private equity firm completely operates in a totally different, highly elevated financial universe. Because they manage trillions of dollars and have massive, completely untethered lines of credit from the central banking system at incredibly low preferential interest rates, they absolutely do not need a mortgage. They have unlimited, massive bags of completely liquid cash. When a highly desirable, perfectly normal single-family home goes on the market in a quiet, safe neighborhood, the massive corporate algorithm instantly flags it. While the middle-class family is excitedly planning to visit the open house on a Sunday afternoon, the private equity firm completely bypasses the entire process. They aggressively submit a massive cash offer, totally sight unseen, that is mathematically 20 or 30% completely above the asking price. The desperate seller sees a massive guaranteed bag of cash with absolutely zero mortgage contingencies, and they immediately accept the offer. The middle-class family never even had a single solitary chance to compete. They were entirely mathematically outgunned by a massive financial machine that prints its own ammunition. The massive corporation buys the physical house, instantly slaps a fresh coat of cheap gray paint on the walls, and aggressively puts it right back on the market the very next week as a highly overpriced permanent rental property. But you are probably asking yourself, why are these massive trillion-dollar Wall Street giants suddenly so completely obsessed with buying boring, normal middle-class houses? Why are they aggressively overpaying for simple physical properties? This is where the terrifying, completely ruthless mathematics of the modern elite are fully exposed. The institutional investors completely understand that the global fiat currency system is rapidly collapsing under the massive weight of endless money printing. They know that holding massive amounts of digital cash is absolute financial suicide because inflation is violently melting the purchasing power of the dollar every single day. They absolutely must park their massive, glowing mountains of capital into physical, finite, completely undeniable hard assets. Single-family homes are the absolute perfect, ultimate vehicle for massive capital preservation. They are literally buying the physical ground beneath your feet to completely protect their own immense wealth from the terrifying fires of inflation. And the secondary goal of this massive corporate buyout is even more psychologically terrifying. It is the absolute total enforcement of the subscription economy. Over the last 20 years, the massive technology corporations have completely trained the human population to blindly accept the concept of endless monthly subscriptions. You no longer own your physical music. You pay a monthly fee to stream it. You no longer own your computer software. You pay a monthly license to access it. You no longer own your physical movies. You pay a massive corporate platform for the temporary privilege of watching them. The elite have successfully transitioned the global economy from a model of absolute ownership to a model of permanent, highly profitable access. And now, the massive private equity firms are aggressively applying that exact same mathematical extraction model to human shelter. They want to completely transform the traditional housing market into a massive, inescapable subscription service. They want you to pay a monthly subscription fee simply for the basic human right to have a roof over your head. The corporate marketing machine is actively executing a massive, highly engineered psychological operation to completely convince the younger generations that renting is actually a massive lifestyle upgrade. You see the highly paid financial influencers and the massive media outlets constantly publishing incredibly toxic articles telling you that buying a house is a terrible financial decision. They tell you that renting gives you absolute geographical flexibility. They tell you that renting completely frees you from the terrible burden of paying for a new roof or fixing a broken water heater. They actively, aggressively sell you the completely highly manipulated illusion that owning nothing is the ultimate form of modern freedom. It is a brilliant, terrifying, and completely evil psychological trap. They are actively convincing the modern peasant to happily lock themselves inside a completely invisible iron cage. When you agree to become a permanent, lifelong renter in a corporately owned neighborhood, you are mathematically agreeing to completely bleed out your financial future to physically enrich a massive Wall Street fund. Every single time you pay your massive $2,000 monthly rent, you are completely funding the elite's incredibly lavish lifestyle. You are paying off their massive corporate loans. You are buying them another private jet. And absolutely most importantly, you are allowing them to capture 100% of the massive, completely tax-free property appreciation over the next 30 years. You are entirely paying the massive mortgage on the property, but the massive Wall Street corporation is legally keeping absolutely all of the compounding equity. You are physically doing all of the exhausting corporate labor to generate the monthly cash flow, and the modern feudal lord is violently extracting it from your bank account on the first day of every single month. You have been completely returned to the dark ages of feudalism, but the illusion of modern convenience has completely blinded you to your own permanent financial slavery. If you are listening to this exact sentence right now and you feel a massive, heavy iron blindfold violently ripping off your face, completely realizing that the entire real estate market has been completely weaponized against your future family, you are officially stepping completely out of the passive renter matrix. But I must issue a very serious, incredibly urgent warning right now. You absolutely cannot sit back and passively wait for the government to magically step in and save you from this massive corporate invasion. The government politicians are completely heavily funded, highly lobbied, and entirely controlled by the exact same massive financial institutions that are aggressively buying your neighborhood. The system is completely, totally, and fundamentally rigged in favor of the massive capital allocators. If you passively wait for a housing market crash, the massive Wall Street funds will simply use their infinite bags of completely untethered cash to violently buy up even more properties at a massive discount. This is a brutal, entirely mathematical war for physical territory, and you are actively running completely out of time. Grab a heavy pen and a blank piece of paper right now. Eliminate absolutely all distractions, completely around you. Violently turn off your glowing television screen and strictly prepare to execute this actionable step-by-step escape plan to permanently assassinate your passive consumer mindset, aggressively manipulate your own capital, and forcefully transition from a highly drained, permanently renting peasant into an untouchable, mathematically lethal master of physical territory. Rule number 1, you must completely, radically, and violently reprogram your entire psychological understanding of the modern housing market. You must permanently stop celebrating the fact that your current property value is artificially increasing, because that exact same artificial inflation is completely guaranteeing that your own children will absolutely never be able to afford a home of their own. You must profoundly understand that the massive corporate buyout is a direct, highly calculated attack on your multi-generational wealth. You must completely immunize your mind against the toxic, heavily manipulated media narrative that renting is a massive lifestyle upgrade. You must strictly view physical land and hard assets as the absolute only viable lifeboat in a rapidly flooding global economy. Your new, absolute permanent financial goal is to aggressively secure physical, undeniable territory completely outside the reach of the massive Wall Street funds. Rule number 2. You must aggressively initiate a massive, relentless pursuit of extreme capital generation. The traditional, deeply conservative middle-class strategy of slowly saving 10% of your salary in a completely useless, rapidly melting savings account is absolute financial suicide in the modern era. You absolutely cannot save your way to home ownership when massive trillion-dollar funds are actively bidding up the physical properties by 20% every single week. You must violently, aggressively build high-income, highly scalable skills. You must actively build massive digital side businesses. You must forcefully demand higher compensation for your physical labor. You need massive, overflowing buckets of completely aggressive capital to fight back against the institutional machine. You must completely sacrifice your highly comfortable, heavily distracted weekends. Entirely eliminate all rapidly depreciating luxury expenses and focus absolutely all of your physical energy on aggressively increasing your total monthly cash flow to legally force your way into the property market. Rule number 3. You must completely embrace the absolute undeniable superpower of strategic asset acquisition. When you finally generate the massive capital required to aggressively secure a physical property, you must violently hold on to it completely forever. You absolutely must never, ever sell your physical property to a massive anonymous corporate buyer, no matter how incredibly massive and tempting their cash offer might be. When you sell your family home to a massive private equity firm, you are actively participating in the complete destruction of the middle class and permanently handing your physical territory over to the modern feudal lords. Once a piece of physical land or a completely solid single-family home enters your invisible financial fortress, it absolutely never leaves. You aggressively rent it out to other normal hardworking families. You actively use it as massive collateral to legally borrow completely tax-free debt. You aggressively hoard the physical ground, allowing it to profoundly compound and multiply entirely in the dark, building a massive, heavy foundation of true multi-generational wealth that completely locks the Wall Street matrix out of your family's future. Let us completely summarize this brutal, completely mind-bending reality before you go out and take massive, life-changing action today. The modern real estate market is no longer a normal, balanced system of completely average families buying homes. It has been entirely transformed into a highly engineered, aggressively funded battlefield where massive private equity firms are actively executing a permanent land grab. They are aggressively using their completely infinite, low-interest fiat capital to violently outbid the middle class, entirely transforming the global population into a highly profitable, permanently bleeding class of modern peasants. The traditional financial advice to passively wait for a market correction or to happily embrace the extreme flexibility of the subscription renter lifestyle is the absolute most dangerous, toxic, and mathematically destructive financial advice in the modern world. It mathematically guarantees that you will completely remain a highly drained, constantly bleeding target, permanently trapped on an exhausting, rusty hamster wheel of endless monthly rent payments. The absolute only possible way to completely win this entirely rigged game is to violently unplug yourself from the passive renter illusion. Aggressively generate massive scalable capital, forcefully secure physical territory, and actively adopt the invisible, untouchable, godlike lifestyle of permanent asset ownership, exactly like a true master of the universe. If this terrifying, reality-shattering information finally completely opened your eyes, if you feel like I just violently ripped you entirely out of the Neo-Feudalism matrix and finally handed you the absolute dark truth about exactly who is actually buying your neighborhood, then I absolutely need you to completely destroy that like button and aggressively subscribe to the channel right now. You absolutely cannot afford to miss the extremely high-level, highly aggressive wealth-building strategies we have coming up next on this massive reality-breaking channel. And speaking of massive financial traps that are specifically engineered to completely lock up your highly valuable capital and mathematically guarantee that Wall Street violently extracts massive, completely unjustified fees from your life savings while you are entirely terrified to even touch your own money. If you truly want to deeply understand the absolute biggest, most highly manipulative lie ever told by the traditional retirement industry, and exactly how the concept of the standard 401k plan is a massive, incredibly toxic, psychological prison designed entirely to lock your money away until you are completely too old to actually enjoy it, you absolutely have to watch this video right here on the screen. In it, I completely and ruthlessly break down the ultimate Wall Street lockup illusion, and I show you exactly why the true elite completely refuse to hand their capital over to greedy, highly paid mutual fund managers, choosing instead to aggressively build massive private empires they completely control today. Click that video right now. Your future, highly liquid, absolutely untethered, and permanently free self will eternally thank you. I will see you over there on the completely other side.